Thank you, everybody, for joining our training. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. And then afterwards, we will stay on so that way we can do our survey afterwards. And then, we'll give some announcements if we have any, we'll give time for questions. And I will pass it on over to Joseph.
All right, so first, let me properly share my screen here, and we will get into it. All right, are you guys seeing the presentation or the notes?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. That's not the option I was looking for. Anything now?
No, not yet.
Huh. It's telling me on my end that it's working, but I do have that uber slow internet, so I don't know. Oh, wait, hold on. How about now?
There we go. Yes.
See, you can't just tell it to share. You have to say share and then click the button to say that you're sharing it. So yeah, I just wanted to will it with my I don't know, my charm and good wit. Anyways, all right. So let's get into another session. I think most of you, if not all of you, were on with me last time. Is there anybody that was not with me last time when I did a training? All right, I'm not getting any.
I wasn't on with you last time.
Oh, but you know me. I'm pretty much just asking so I can see how deep I need to get into my self-introduction, which is not that deep, because Gina knows too much of me. She's like, man, I wish I could have less Joseph in my life. But okay.
That's not true, Joseph. That's not true.
All right. So today we're here to talk about collaborator engagement and retention. And so here I am again. I'm that guy that spoke to you last time. I'm doing it again. They can't get rid of me for some reason. The main three things that we want to accomplish today is to have an idea of what a collaborator is. Now, I'm going to give you a specific definition from a specific place, and I'll explain why that specific definition from a specific place, it can be very useful for us in the context as health councils, mostly. And then how do you engage and keep a collaborator? Because we all have to collaborate with multiple partners and people to get the things that we want to get done and the change that we want to see in the world completed. However, starting and keeping the partners that you work with can be very challenging. So I'm not going to give you all the ideas of how to do this. What I am going to do, though, is give you a way of looking at it that can be an overarching principle that can guide your strategies. And then we're going to talk about how do you actually manage your collaborators. And when I say manage, I don't mean in a power imbalance way of you have power and you're telling people what to do. I mean, how do you keep it all together for yourself? How do you understand all of the people you're working with, where you are with them, and what you need to do with them? And then if we have the time, which I'm hoping we will, we're going to actually practice a recruitment and retention exercise. So I wanted to add this in, and to be completely honest and upfront with you, this is something I'm learning too, because language is something that changes often. It responds to the things that it needs to respond to in society to properly honor everyone. And so I want to say, why not the word stakeholders? And this is a word that we've used often, and sometimes in some graphics, you might still see that word because in many academic disciplines, this is the word that is still used. However, we're growing and we're learning to use different words. So because I'm a student with this, I'm going to read to you the words of somebody who could better describe it and give you some resources, and also open up if anybody else wants to speak to that as well. But this is from a phenomenal article out of the University of Texas's School of Public Health, their Houston branch to be specific. Historically, the term stakeholder has covetous connotations and has been used by people in power or the holders. Merriam-Webster also defines stakeholders as a person holding property or owning an obligation that is claimed by two or more adverse claimants and who has no claim to interest or property or obligation. This definition seems to have roots in colonialism, and settlers would drive wooden stakes in the ground to literally stake their claim on indigenous land. The term has also been used in mining prospecting, in which one would drive 4 stakes into the corners of a property that they want to claim. Obviously, this definition of stakeholder is problematic and sheds light on a situation which public health researchers should reflect on: intention versus impact. A couple of other resources that I just encourage you to Google, and these will pop up instantly if you Google them. If you were to look for the preferred terms for select population groups and communities by the CDC, you can find some other terms that could be better used. Also, this op-ed that I found very useful from a public health journal, a fairly respected public health peer-reviewed journal. And the article is called Banishing Stakeholders. So I am not an authority with any of that, but I do want to open up the room to people that have more experience with this. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add around why we would not use the word stakeholders?
And again, what's the alternative you're recommending, Joseph?
I am recommending the word collaborators. However, this is wide open. It can be whatever you want it to be. That's the beautiful thing.
You know, I guess I'll just share. I mean, I really appreciate the education. I think there's so much to learn about language, right? And at the same time, I have to say the word collaborator. To collaborate is wonderful. To be a collaborator from my culture has an incredibly negative connotation. It's a collaborator with people who are oppressing other people. And, you know, when you call somebody a collaborator, it's often in a very derogatory situation. So for example, you know, I can just say and I don't know if other people have experience with this, but it carries that a very strong negative derogatory term. People who are collaborating with people in power against the people, the community that they're a part of.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Shelley. I was not aware of that. I hope you could extend some.
I was just going to be specific, like, for example, in the concentration camps during World War II, people from the population that were being interned and killed, they would select individuals. They were given, you know, they were saved as they put in place and implemented the policies of the captors.
Yes, thank you. And that's a great example of how these things continue to evolve. It's a lot of times it's difficult to take all of the narratives into consideration because maybe we aren't always, sometimes it's intentional, but maybe we aren't always in proximity of those perspectives that we need to hear. So I thank you for that. I thank you for lifting up that perspective. And I would ask you to extend me some grace as we continue through this presentation, understanding that that's not where this is coming from. I did get this off of one of the recommended words from the CDC, but I'm definitely open for not using this term. And I think I see another hand up. Annie, yes, please.
I was going to say that I like the word collaborator better than I like the word stakeholder. In terms of working within communities, I feel like the word collaborator means like we're working together towards the common goal, versus stakeholder is somebody who, in my mind, maybe because I don't know, but to me, stakeholder means like somebody who has ownership in it already. Whereas I feel like collaborator is like more welcoming, like we can collaborate and work together. Stakeholder might be, you might feel like you're excluded already because you don't have an ownership in it. Just my opinion.
Thank you for that, Annie. And like I said, the beauty of this is that you can choose whatever word best resonates with the community that you're working with. Collaborator, partner, whatever works. Please use that. Don't use what doesn't work. And that's the main thing.
Well,
all right. Oh, somebody said something?
Janice just made a, oh, go ahead, Shelley.
you can lift up what Janice said, and then I'll respond.
Yeah, I was just gonna, Janice made a comment that that mining prospecting is still legal in New Mexico and that you could still drive stakes into four corners and put a piece of paper and mining rights to the stakeholder, which I thought was very interesting. Thanks for highlighting that, Janice. But Shelley, please go ahead.
And I want to lift up what Geraldine and Rielena said, because I have to say I love the word to collaborate as a verb. But as you can see in the dictionary definition, the second definition, that I put in the chat is a person who cooperates traitorously with an enemy, a defector, right? And they were suggesting, and I know it's what I like to use, is community partners, which is to me, but I do think we need to consider in all of our communities that there are resonances with certain populations, even if we're not aware of it, just like we're lifting up around stakeholders has resonance. So many of us are used to it, but it seems to me important to consider that we may not even be aware of those negative resonances when we use something, and part of what we're trying to do is learn about them, right? So I appreciate the conversation.
Yes, and it's a perfect example, right? The conversation we just had of walking in grace with one another, but also in helping people understand different perspectives in the history that they're based on. So I definitely appreciate that. Because I had to go with some word, that's the word that's all over the PowerPoint presentation. So I will give my apologies in advance and ask for grace on that. Another thing that I want to lift up also is where a majority of the definitions that you're going to hear today are going to come from. Now, the beautiful thing about the type of work we engage with in the community is we can draw upon multiple academic and wisdom disciplines in engaging in this work. However, specifically, we're going to look at it from the perspective of project management, and this is why. Projects are a singularly executed endeavor with a certain scope, a quality, and a financial frame with beginning and an end of particular complexity and interdisciplinarity, I can't speak today, in character. In other words, these are actions that are tied to funding often. Many of us operate in primarily grant-funded spaces. If you aren't driven generally by grants, you might be driven by specific contracts, and it's the same issue where you have specific deliverables tied to an amount of value. And the science of project management has been around for a while. I would say that it began to be studied formally in academic spaces in the 50s, and since has continued to grow. And there's actually a lot of academic writing around why it's important for nonprofits to engage in best practices from project management. So when I talk about this thing that we're aiming to have in our communities, and learn how to manage and learn how to do better, I'm going to be using definitions from project management and perspectives and exercises from project management. All right. So from the perspective of project management, this is the definition. A person or organization that is actively involved in the project or whose interests may be positively or negatively affected by execution of the project. And that's important to think through, positively and negatively. Not only thinking who's going to like that I'm trying to do this specific thing, in my community, but who's not going to like it? They're people that you need to work with and engage as well. This person may also exert influence over the project and its deliverables. So for instance, a funder could be considered that person. Sometimes it may not directly be a funder, but it could be an elected official or somebody that may be able to exert social influence in some cases over the project and its deliverables. This isn't always a person. This can also be a group of individuals, an organization. It can show up in a lot of different ways. And that's the key thing to understand. So let's do a brief exercise around this. And I'm going to throw out a couple of scenarios to you. And I want you to tell me who these people would be for that. So as health councils, we have a lot of different people that we often think of, but let's take our minds outside of that, right? And I want to start with, just say you are a college athletic coach. Choose whatever sport you like. If you don't like sports, I don't know, choose it for something you do like. If you like baking, you are a college baking coach, right? So let me ask you to unmute and tell me, who are the people that I would reach out to and or organizations or groups of people that I would reach out to if I was a college athletic coach or baker coach, whatever you want?
So I used to be an ag teacher, so I used to coach like livestock judging teams and poultry and all that. So I always collaborated with local farmers and ranchers, and so that my students could go and practice like at their places and like look at their cattle or sheep or whatever. I also collaborated with other well, I was high school, but I would collaborate with community colleges. Because sometimes if they had a judging team, like we could work together to look at cattle, sheep, goats, whatever.
Awesome. So very good example. So I'm hearing people that can provide opportunities to help your athletes, so to speak, train, but also people that may have more proximity to them.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Looking for people who have resources that I don't.
I like the way you phrase that. People that have resources that I don't. Let me hear some other things.
You would collaborate with your professional colleagues.
Yep. Give me an example of that. What can that look like?
Maybe you're having an issue with a student or a lesson, and you might talk to other professors or coaches regarding how to handle that.
Oh, I like that. So Annie talked about working with people that have resources that you don't have. You're talking about working with people that have information or experience that you don't have. That's great, Laura. I like that. That's good. Give me some others.
Along with what Laura said, like going with your coworkers or other people that have already created the wheel, so you're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. So not only people that have had deeper experience, but maybe people that have actually created content for that particular thing you're trying to accomplish. Very good. Very good. All right. Now you're a parent arranging a birthday party for a 10-year-old. Maybe you've actually done this in real life. So feel free to use real life examples. Who are the different people or groups or even organizations that you're reaching out to?
Other parents.
Yep. Other parents. Why are we reaching out to other parents?
To invite them there for ideas and also to invite their children to participate, of course, their children as well.
Yes, because most 10-year-olds don't get to control, they don't have full autonomy over their lives, right? What else? Let me hear some others. That's good.
People who provide services like maybe you want to order food or decorations. I know it's the thing.
Yeah, yeah. As someone with 4 kids that has had multiple birthday parties, I find that one of the people I reach out to a lot is Amazon, Amazon.com. We get all the things we need from Amazon.com. That's who I collaborate with. Who else?
I would collaborate with my 10-year-old to see what activities
Ooh.
they might prefer or enjoy at the party.
Yes. Just real talk for a second. How often do we work hard to engage a population without actually asking the population how they feel about it? I'm
Not
not saying
always.
anybody's guilty here. But I'm sure we've all seen that happen more than once, right? All right, let's get a little more sophisticated with this. What about a political campaign manager? And I want you to think of the people that maybe wouldn't be as obvious. Who are the people we were reaching out to? Who are the groups? Who are the organizations?
You might reach out to voters
Mm-hmm.
to see what they're interested in,
Yeah.
what's important to them.
You mean you should find out what they're interested in instead of telling them? Yes, absolutely, Laura. Thank you. What else?
Maybe looking for like a venue to have like a meet and greet
Mm,
where you could like actually have like, I mean, kind of like what Laura said, but like you want to talk to them and gain information.
mm-hmm.
So you might work with like somebody that like pay to host or like, pay to rent a place where people could come and speak in person.
Yes, yes, yes. Very good. Very good. Now, there's another concept I want you guys to think about as well. And it's what I call the magic ingredient, right? Now, I did not have the opportunity, honor, or pleasure of being born in New Mexico. I kind of wish I was, but I was born in Detroit and I grew up in Florida. And one interesting fact about me is, let's see, I moved to New Mexico in early 2012. I was 31 years old. And up until that moment, I had no concept of what green chili was. I didn't know it existed. My life changed drastically after I got to enjoy my first green chili cheeseburger. And from then on, eating has been different. I even eat desserts with green chili. Green chili is just a part of my life. If somebody asked me if I consider myself a New Mexican, I would say, look at my freezer, okay? That's the freezer of a New Mexican. Tell me otherwise. Anyways, that's just how I feel. That's what I call the magic ingredient. Now, the reason why it's a magic ingredient to me in this beautiful state that I love and plan on spreading my ashes in is because when you go to other states, you don't really find it as much or in the same quantity or with the same emphasis, right? So when you're thinking through the particular partners or people that you need to work with, I always want to ask the question, what's the magic ingredient? What's the thing that doesn't show up in other communities? What's the thing that doesn't have the same emphasis or proximity, or maybe there's just not as much of it in your particular region that you must consult? A lot of times we like to fall into standard boxes, and standard boxes are good for a start. However, the thing that makes your particular population special, the thing that makes your particular population even inspiring, is a lot of times the very thing that people will grow strength and identity from. So I also tell people, when thinking through the partners that one would want to work with, think, what's your magic ingredient? What is the thing that makes you special? That makes sense, right? I'm going to move on. So How do you engage or keep these people? That's an important question. Those of you who have been doing this work for a while know that people don't often stick around often. Sometimes you have people that are there for the long haul, but they are the exception and not the rule in many cases. But how do you work towards changing that? Sometimes you can change that, sometimes you can't. The nature of the work we do means that the people we work with will often change. However, most things that we do are going to be based on relationship. Our state is a very small state. There's only 2 million of us in this entire state. Even in the more populated areas, you'll run into people again, because and that causes us to be more relational. And this is another important concept that I want you to really keep in mind. And again, this is one of those overarching concepts. It's not necessarily about the strategies, because the strategies that you need are going to be specific to your area and to your population. For instance, does anybody in here know what mutton busting is? Nobody? I don't have any mutton busters in here. Oh,
I
Emily
do.
knows. Emily knows. Okay, Annie knows. All right. So mutton busting, in my understanding, is an activity and or a sport in which you hold on to a mutton, to a sheep, and you just see how long you can hold on to them. Now, I did not know that was a thing until I moved to Hidalgo County, New Mexico. I'd never come across it or anything. However, I've seen in a lot of different community events where they would do mutton busting, and it was a thing that brought everybody together. Now, I promise you this, if they started doing mutton busting in Detroit, Michigan, I don't know if a lot of people would just like want to participate that. That's not a culturally relevant thing in Detroit, Michigan, right? However, in Hidalgo County, as somebody who was born in Detroit, Michigan, I got it. It made sense to me, right? So the reason why I say that is because strategies are different no matter what. Here's the one thing, one of the few things that isn't necessarily going to be different, no matter who you're working in. And it's what is known as the WIFM. Anybody ever heard of a WIFM? Now, when I was growing up in the 90s, if you were like, if you fancied a young lady, you would call her wifey, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a WIFM. WIFM is an acronym, and it stands for What's in It for Me. In other words, the thing you're working on, how does it serve the person that you're engaging? What's in it for them? You have to think about that. You can't assume that what's in it for you is experienced as what's in it for them, especially in going back to the initial definition. When you think of the people that maybe it will negatively affect them, right? So for instance, if I'm talking to somebody who, and I'm just going to make something up. Let's say I want to paint all the sidewalks polka dot in my community. And there are people that are like, there's no way you're going to paint polka dots on my sidewalk. That is terrible. When I grew up, nobody put polka dots on sidewalks. How dare you think of such a thing? I might say, well, I'm here to talk to you and engage with you around this so that I can hear what you have to say for it and add your input, right? In other words, what's in it for them is maybe me being able to direct their voice in a way that is helpful for them and less harmful for the people that I'm representing, the polka dot people. I don't know where I come up with these examples. So identifying a WIFM. Now, when we get to the exercise, we're going to actually spend some time thinking through what that can look like, right? But just as a quick example, if I'm working with law enforcement, for instance, there could be several things. Especially if I'm asking them to do something that maybe they just don't want to do. I have to think, well, what could be a motivator for them? It could be positive press. You know, law enforcement's been struggling with positive press lately. Well, hey, let me get you some positive press. Maybe I can give you an opportunity to connect with the community in a different way, so they don't see you as just some punitive thing, but maybe something positive or relational in a different way. Maybe you can redefine yourself in this situation. I'm giving them something different that they didn't have before. So you need to consider the WIFM. So when we get into management, I want to look at best practices in project management. And this is an example of what it could look like. And this, I consulted with Catherine County Health Council, and this was one of the things we were able to build out. And this was their management plan for their people, whatever we're calling them. And I'm not going to explain this now because I'm going to explain how we got there first, right? I want to also introduce the concept of thinking through the level of influence. Now, I'll acknowledge up front that this particular model in project management is problematic in some areas. For instance, the names that they're commonly known, and this has been around for since the early 90s. This is based off of stakeholder management theory. And you can read all the academic papers and works on that if you'd like. But this is based off of the project management salience model. And it looks at the intersection of three specific things. Now, are there other things that you could look at? Absolutely. However, when you are helping and thinking through and having the conversation with your health councils of how people are affected and how specific people that you work with or organizations that you work with are affected or impact the specific project you're working on, you'll find that looking at these three things will help give you the dimensions that you need to properly prioritize. So one is power. So what's an example of somebody that can exert a lot of power over a project, but maybe they aren't urgently connected or they aren't very legitimate to it? You tell me. We'll go back to the polka dots on the sidewalk. Who's got power over that?
Maybe a code enforcer would have power over that.
Thank you. Thank you. A code enforcer. Now, a code enforcer might also be connected to that in the sake that they're the ones that are looking at the sidewalks and inspecting the sidewalks. They're keeping note of how you're maintaining the sidewalks. So that's also going to add a level of legitimacy, right? Now, depending on when it's happening, for instance, let's say that inspections are going to happen in a month, that's going to increase the urgency, right? No matter what project you're working on, there are going to be people that have more legitimate and less legitimate connection to it. There are going to be people that experience different levels of urgency. Maybe it affects them immediately. Maybe for some people, it doesn't affect them much. And there are going to be people that have power. And it's interesting how power has shifted in the social media age, because there was a time where when you wanted to know what people thought about something, you actually had to hear from them. And maybe you would get a sense from the general media that everybody had access to of how the society thought of it. But now, as we live in a social media age, in real time, you can almost see how people feel about things. Oftentimes, people that maybe even have less urgency or legitimacy, you can get their take on these things, which is interesting. And that in itself, that social response can be very powerful, for better or for worse. I think it can be a very good thing in most cases. Now, these words on the left, you can take those or leave those. These are the words that are traditionally associated with the various intersections here. The words themselves don't matter. What does matter is having the conversation and understanding when you're working with all of your partners, understanding their level of influence on the project. And that's important. And when I say influence, it's really important that you understand that that doesn't mean power. For instance, there could be somebody that has all the urgency and all of the legitimacy and none of the power, they're going to be prioritized over somebody that just has power when you look at it through the salience model. Now, another reason why it's important to be able to look at level of influence is sometimes you have very limited resources, right? And you may have to prioritize who you can reach out to. Because if you really sat down and thought of all of the people, organizations, and or places that are connected to everything you're doing, you're going to come up with thousands of people. And I don't know if any of you are resourced enough to reach out to thousands of people. Maybe some of you are, but most of us aren't. So let's say that you can only do 40. Well, this is a way of looking through several of these people that you want to work with and categorizing them in ways that are beneficial for you and for them. Another way of looking at the people that you may want to work with is level of engagement. And this is another important thing. Are there more categories with this? Yes. But these are the ones that are used in project management for good reason. The first one is unaware. Unaware of the project and the potential impacts. For instance, if I want to make a difference with the way that how banks operate, and the bank managers in my area have no clue that I'm even working on a project around this, that could be a problem, right? So I have to acknowledge that they're completely unaware. And so my first step is first helping them be aware of what we're doing. After aware, there is resistant. Maybe they're aware of the project and the potential impacts, but they're resistant to that change. They've heard of your project. They might even understand how it works, but they do not like it and they don't want it to happen. Then there's neutral. And a lot of us, especially those that work in the community, we come across a lot of neutral people, right? They're aware of what we're doing and they're neither supportive or resistant. And so that's actually, in this concept of level of engagement, that's actually a positive step forward. Because it's much harder to work with somebody, or much easier to work with somebody that is neutral versus resistant. And even when someone's unaware, you have to first solve the issue of education. Then there's where we generally need people to show up in the initiatives that we're working on. They're supportive, they're aware of the project and the impacts, and supportive to change. So they like it, they want to see more of it. Maybe they're even thinking about helping. Maybe they'll encourage others to help. And then there's leading. They're aware of the project and impacts and actively engaged in ensuing the project success, right? So these are the people that we're often looking for. Here's the issue, and this is why this exercise is extremely important also when thinking through the people that you're working with. Sometimes we want to start with somebody that's completely unaware and somehow take them straight to leading, right? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's not efficient and it's not likely. Especially if, back to the reason why we're looking at it through the concept of project management in the first time, when we have time-sensitive things where deliverables are attached to specific, a specific value, right? We have to be realistic about what we can do. Let's say it's a 12-month period. What can we do in those 12 months? Is it realistic to assume that I can take somebody unaware to leading in 12 months? In some cases, yeah, maybe. In some cases, maybe not. Maybe just getting them neutral is actually a win. And in a month 13 to 24, my goal is to get them to supporting or leading, right? And so this is another systematic way of looking at it, but also in measuring it, right? Because evaluation is important. How else do you know how well you did a thing? Yeah. So when we talk about level of engagement, another important thing to do is to analyze the gaps between the current engagement and the desired engagement. So this is what they call the engagement matrix in project management, and it is an often heavily utilized tool. I've used this method for 10 years, and let me tell you, it has been a game changer for me, because the reality is I can't keep in my mind how many people I need to work with on a regular basis. However, I can record all of the various people I work with, and in specific points in time, I can acknowledge where they are in their level of engagement and where I need them to be. And periodically I can check back and see, okay, has this changed? Do I need to change my strategies to get them from one place to the next? Have they exceeded my expectations? That happens many times too. So this is another strategy used in project management to manage your stakeholders. Now, I'm going to show you a concept that I'm sure most of you are very familiar with, SMART goals. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about SMART goals, just acknowledging that all of the information that I showed you earlier, you want to be able to compile this information in a smart way. You want to make sure that it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Why? Because your funding is. And when our strategies don't match up with our funding, often that can put us in sticky situations, and we don't get the things done that we want to get done. Or sometimes we don't do the best job focusing what we need to get done. Maybe we think too little of what we can get done, or maybe we overshoot what's realistic in that time period, right? And this is how you can look at the people you work with in that way. So when I put this back in front of you, hopefully this makes a little more sense. So the first thing is that you just want to be able to identify who that person is, or that entity, right? And I've got various examples here. So here's Miss Adult Influencer, the type of person they are. In other words, what sector do they represent? If you're working on a specific thing and you've identified, we need to work with these particular populations. Okay, well, where does this person fit into that specific population? Sometimes this person doesn't necessarily have to be a person. It could be a position. For instance, if I'm doing work with a local governor or a government, I'm going to always want to have the county manager on my list, right? Now, depending on where you live, that county manager could be a high turnover situation, right? If I'm working with schools, I want to have the superintendent on this list. Depending on where you live, that could be a high turnover situation. Either way, I still need to have that person. I need to identify who that person is, and then the type, why that person is relevant to the specific project that I'm doing. The level of influence, if you choose to use the words, you can make up your own words if you want, but just indicating that I've thought through the various spheres of influence that they carry, right? Because that can help me prioritize. Or in some cases, it can help me understand who's most vulnerable in the situation, which is also a very important component. And then acknowledging their current level of engagement, where they are now as of this specific date, and where I need them to be for this project to be a success, right? Then it's just a matter of the SMART goals, the who, what, when, and where, right? Who's going to reach out to this person? In this case, it's a coordinator that's going to reach out to Miss Adult Influence, her, who is unaware, but I need them to be leading in the next 12 months. When am I going to reach out? Well, I'm friends with them. My niece's baby shower is coming up, and I know that they're going to be there. Sometimes it's professional, sometimes it's personal. That's how things are done in New Mexico, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to discuss how I'm impressed with their community engagement and ask if they'd come to the next meeting, right? And I will be able to look back at this quarterly, monthly, annually, whatever makes sense for you guys, and see how well we did it, right? I'll be able to measure how far we got with it. Maybe we didn't get them to leading. Maybe we only got them to aware. And so I need to change my strategies in the next go around, because the strategies that I used didn't get them quite to where I needed them to go. Any questions about this before I move on? I'm hoping this makes sense. All right, I'm seeing a nod. Thank you, Laura. You're my primary feedback right now. You're the only camera I could see, so If Laura's okay with it, I'm just assuming everybody's okay with it. You're holding a lot of power in this situation. If I go back to the salience model, you're hitting all three. You got urgency, you've got legitimacy, and power. Okay, moving on. So we have a little time to do this exercise. And this is something that I want you to think through. And it's an example of how you might work on the WIFM. Now, the WIFM is a concept that shows up in a lot of different areas. It shows up a lot in sales and sales management. So if you formally study sales and sales management, you'll come across this concept, but also it shows up in community organizing. It can be labeled different ways, but if you formally study community organizing, you'll find ultimately that one of the first questions is what interest are you going to be able to speak to with this initiative, with the person that you're reaching out to, right? So the first thing is you think of what that collaborator is, right? It can be fictional, but I'm going to ask you for the sake of this exercise to actually think of a current person that you want to work with or a desired person that you want to work with. Maybe one that has been elusive to you, or maybe one that you just don't know much about, but you need to know more about for your project to be successful. And then I want you to think through the benefits, to come up with at least 2 to 3 benefits for change for them. If what you are working on takes place, what are the benefits for change that they would find exciting, invigorating, inspiring? You want to be able to start the conversation with those things. And then what's important too is to be able to know how to communicate it, not just for you, but whoever else you're working with. So many of you as health councils maybe you have a steering committee, maybe you have specific action groups or committees, right? They need to be on the same page as whoever the initial driver of this project is, right? They need to have the same lingo. If they run into Miss Parental Influencer before you get a chance, it's important that they're able to say the same thing that you're able to say to them, right? So then what is very useful is to create a 1 to 2 sentence, what is called a WIFM statement that combines the key benefits of the collaborator. Now, if we were all in a room together, we would have whiteboards everywhere. You'd have papers in front of you. We'd probably take 30 to 45 minutes. As a matter of fact, there's 2 people in this digital space that I've actually done this exercise with. And we would take the time. Here, we're going to come about this a lot more informally. We're just going to speak it out loud. We can even do it extemporaneously in real time. But I want you to think through these things. And here's an example. So a school board member, let's say I'm trying to get a specific thing done and I need to engage with the school board member for this to happen properly. So I might say to that person, hey, this is going to improve student performance. This is one of the benefits. You know what? It'll also make it easier on teachers. And hey, I know you've had troubles with turnover with teachers, and you know, more people are leaving the profession than any time in history right now, it seems. So this is going to help with that. And then, by the way, I know, elections are coming up soon. People might want to re-elect you if they see that you're aligned with this, right? Those are 3 benefits. So when I start the conversation, I'm not just starting the conversation saying, hey, will you help me with this thing? Because it's a really good thing for the community and it would make a difference. Well, maybe they don't care. Let's be honest. Sometimes that just happens, right? Maybe they don't care. Maybe the impact of the community you're serving, that you're passionate about uplifting, maybe it's very far from their mind, right? So you have to think, how do you make them care? So if I were to put it in a sentence, we would love you to join the blank blank initiative. As an evidence-based practice, it has been shown to improve student performance and lighten the load of teachers. This type of action will show will show people you are a person of action in the upcoming election, right? And that's a simple thing that I could distribute with the team that I'm working with. Let's come up with this sentence together so that we have the same spiel when we come across this person. And that even when the initial person says it, that we can reinforce it when we see that person out in the community, when we're stuck with them at a line at Walmart or wherever you do your shopping. Oh, hey, school board member, have you heard of the blank, blank, blank? And you're saying the same things, right? All right. So are there any questions about this particular exercise? Does this make sense the way I presented it to you? All right, I'm seeing a couple of nods. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to ask, and I'm going to do it in a semi-ordered way, but I'm going to ask one person to come up with a specific person that they want to work with. It could be whatever you want. It could be the president of the United States. It could be your neighbor. But I'm just going to ask somebody to unmute and come up with an example so that we can do this together in real time.
For our council, we would like to engage the DWI coordinator.
Good. Thank you very much. All right. And what program are you working on, or project that you're working on, that you want to engage the DWI coordinator with?
We're working on substance abuse issues in our community.
All right. All right. Good stuff. And so that's a key person that you definitely want to connect with. Just for additional background and context, if you were to think through the level of engagement of this person now currently, are they unaware? Are they resistant? Where are they?
They're new to their position, and I believe they just are under some time constraints and very busy.
Okay. So maybe a mixture of unaware, maybe not resistant, or even if they're aware, maybe they're in the case where they're neutral even. All right. And where do you need them to be? Do you need them to be supportive or leading?
Mainly supportive and just providing feedback. Yeah, I think it's just important to have them involved because of the type of projects we're working on.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so now that we have all of that in our heads, I'm going to ask other people in this digital room to tell me 3 things. You can just tell me one and we'll move on to the next person. They can give me an additional one. 3 things that we can approach that DWI coordinator as people who are working on substance misuse prevention, right? What are the benefits that we can present to that person for engaging with us in this project? You tell me. I'll also keep my eyes on the chat if somebody wants to add it that way.
Like, we would like to collaborate with you because as you work with those that are, because they work with like people that are convicted of DWI, right?
Yeah, in some cases they can do a lot of different things depending on how they're resourced. Yeah, but that's definitely one of them.
So like, we want to collaborate with you as working towards like working with those that are convicted and helping like to prevent them from like doing it again. Because isn't it like in DWI like multiple repeaters, I can't think of the word. Help me out here.
It definitely can be. Yes, very good. I like it, Annie. Thank you. Thank you. So that's one thing. Hey, we want to help. You have to be careful how you say this depending on the situation, but hey, we want you to have less clients. We want less people showing up in your office, because the less people that show up in your office, the better it is for everybody, right? Better for the families, better for the person that might be seen as the offender, better for those on the roads that share the roads with them, right? Give me another one. What would be another positive thing that you could, or benefit that you could say for that particular partner?
We can help you amplify your messaging.
Ooh, there you go. Yes, we can uplift, we can join with you and uplift what you're already doing. We can show up along beside you and help do the great work of getting less people in your office, right? Good stuff. Good stuff. Give me one more. Give me one more.
You know, Joseph, one of the things that strikes me is you really have to know what the person themselves cares about. You have to know about their work. I mean, I was going to give you an example, but I don't know enough about this person.
Yeah,
And
yep.
do.
That's a very good point. Yes, absolutely. But and I think that raises an important thing, though, because sometimes you're going to be in that situation, right? We can't know everything about everybody in every situation. Sometimes you need to work with some of you that are working on this CHICA project. Maybe you don't know that much about what you're actually engaging with.
That's certainly, like, for example, you know, the example I was going to give, the utilities director.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, what do I know about a utilities director? It's, you know, I know a little bit more about forestry, but I think it's an important part of this. Like, for example, for the DWI program coordinator, I just gave a presentation to a DWI planning council today, but you might help them recruit DWI planning council members. Like, but you have to know they have a DWI planning council.
Yes. Yes. And just I don't want to get too far off, but I think it connects to, even when you think about who your, I'm going to go with community partners are, right? Because sometimes it's about finding the people that can help give you context in a specific area. And I think the way somebody phrased it earlier is somebody that had access to the information and or experience that they didn't have, right? And that's one of those cases, right? Or can be one of those cases. So bringing that all back, right? So let's say we're going to engage with the DWI coordinator, and let's see if I can remember them all. We're going to say, hey, we're going to keep less people in your office and keep people safe in the community. I imagine that's why you got involved in this work, right? You want to see people improve in these types of situations. We can also trumpet the messaging that you're working on, because we have shared interests, and we can work together and help each of our resources go further with this particular issue. And then the third thing is, you know, we can help you recruit, right? As you get connected with us in all of our networks, that's only going to increase your network, right? Now, I won't go through the process of condensing that into a statement, but I'm hoping you can all kind of see how this can work and how it can be very useful. And it's another way of systematizing a very messy process, because here's the reality. All of us in this digital space, we work with communities, which means that we're doing this already in some sense, right? We're naturally doing these things. We tend to be, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us in the space, we tend to be people persons, purple people eaters. I don't know. We tend to be something with peas, right? And we like to make the connections that are pertinent to the change that we need to see in the world, right? So we do this on one sense, but again, the idea of project management and how it can be useful in enhancing what we already know from our wisdom is that we can measure this. Or if one of us wins the lottery and decides, you know, this has been great, but I'm moving to Malibu, somebody can pick up the work exactly where we left off and know exactly what we were trying to do. All of the things that we had to figure out, like, hey, how do you even engage with DWI? Oh, there's councils. You know what? They can read what you have on your community engagement action plan and go, oh, okay, they have a council, and this is how they connected back in April. And let me pick up with this person that is named, and let's get them from unaware to supportive, right? That's another reason. Another reason also is because the more data you have, the better tooled you are to seek funding. For instance, you don't have to tell them all the things that you tried to accomplish and didn't accomplish, although in some cases that can be helpful too. But you could be able to look at your documented records and say, hey, we engaged with 73 stakeholders last year, right? And on this particular issue, we know that the community wants X, Y, and Z in working with these people. And it can open up to even more data collecting avenues, like having key informant interviews or focus groups, for instance. So, and that's just one example of how you can go about this work. Now, some people, and especially in larger organizations, they can have a very broad, extensive, detail-oriented plan. And maybe your plan doesn't have to be that simple or that extensive. But the key thing is that you have a plan. Because I'm a musician, right? I love jazz specifically because jazz provides room for improvisation, right? And a lot of magic happens during the improvisation. However, if that improvisation doesn't have a structure in which it's contained, a song structure where there is a chord structure and a specific time signature, there's no context to the improvisation, and then it's just noise, right? And so we want to make sure that we provide the best possible context for the wisdom that we already hold and already display by taking best practices with people who have studied these things for decades and engaging them with the wisdom that we already have and continue to have so that we can take it even further. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Complaints, compliments? Candy, I'll take candy. Anything with a C. All right. Ooh, I even got one of those little celebration things. I'll take it. All right, so that's all I have for you today. If anybody wants to reach out to me, feel free to do so. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass it back to the wonderful team here. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Joseph. We appreciate you very much. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at chat as I'm talking. That's where it was coming from. Sorry about that.
I'm loving all the alliterative C words here. Ooh,
All right.
I'll take cute. Yes.
Clear.
Very cute.
That is awesome. I love it. So Rebecca has put in the chat, right, Rebecca, that's the survey that we can start working on. If we can have everybody fill that out, that would be great before we leave. And then Rebecca, do you have any other updates that we wanted to give? We were just going to do the survey right after.
Yep. I think we just if everyone can take the survey, and then if while you're taking the survey, any questions come up, we can always address those too. I think that was great. I think it was, Joseph, thank you so much for giving very actionable tables and things that people can do. I think a lot of times trainings can be very conceptualized, but I think this really gave some concrete ways that you can organize those that you're hoping to connect with.
Thank you. Can we also just acknowledge the command of the English language that Shelley has? I don't know how many C words she just came up with, but she might have wrote down all of them in the chat.
Right.
I just have to acknowledge that is amazing.
That is awesome.
You must be a writer. Yeah. Yeah.
I think crisp is my favorite definition of
crisp.
your presentation today.
I don't quite know what that means, but I like it.
It gives a little room for imagination, but it makes sense.
Yes, crisp. I'm going to keep that one with me. Ooh, thank you, contemplative. I try my best. Thank you. Thank you. You guys have an amazing weekend, and I always enjoy meeting with you guys. I don't just say that. Like, I really I really mean it because I know you guys are out in your community making a difference. And that's what this is all about. That's why we show up, right? That's what we do this for. It doesn't
Absolutely.
always feel like that, but like that's what wakes us up. That's what got us here in the first place. It's crisp.
Very crisp.
It was a crisp morning today, I will say. So maybe
Yeah.
it's just the word of the day.
Right?
I like convincing.
Mm.
Thank you, Joseph.
All right. Well, I think unless anybody else has any other questions, we'll stick around to let you finish up the survey in case you come back. But I think we're pretty set.
Ooh, we can add concise because we're gonna get done early. Yeah. Look at that.
Geraldine is confident that we will. That's awesome.
All right, well, guys,
Lovely
I'm gonna
meeting.
go enjoy some cuisine.
Awesome. Thank you, Joseph. Until next time.
All right,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.